A new theory says that dinosaurs became birds. That sucks. Hi, this is Norris Teaches Science, and we're back again with Mr. Norris here, and we're doing some more biology videos. And today I present to you evolution and early Earth. I'm going to present some information about evolution throughout the next couple videos, and it's just going to be information so you can be informed and make your own decisions about what you want to think about evolution. So in this video, the goal is I can describe what early Earth was like in a biology aspect and how it relates to evolution. So, using this word evolution, most people think humans came from monkeys, and that is not what the term evolution means. The word evolution just means change to something over time. You can even take cell phones, for instance. You guys all probably seen a cell phone, hopefully in your life. Um, I actually got to see cell phones change over my years on this earth. And no, I'm not 50 years old at the time of this video. I am only in my 30s. But I saw them be big, bulky, brick like, and then they got smaller and smaller and smaller, so small that it was smaller than the remote to like a Roku. And then they got bigger when they realized, oh, we could watch videos on our phones, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But that's evolution of cell phones. Or you can talk about the evolution of you over your life, changing over time. As long as something changes over time, it's considered evolution. And we're going to talk about the different aspects of evolution in these next couple of videos. But just remember, everything is about change over time. And sometimes, if you look at this video over here, this is what I'm clued to. Sometimes evolution makes mistakes because we had velociraptors now become kiwis. That's a theory out there. I'm not saying it's actually what happened. It's just a theory. All right. So the theories of first life. There were two competing theories of first life: abiogenesis and biogenesis. If you think of these words, bio means life, genesis means to make, and the prefix a here, if you don't know, if it's a or an as a prefix, it means non or not. So abiogenesis means living things come from non-living things. So the idea was because they're mud, the mud's going to form frogs. We know this is not true. This is not how life begins. Life needs life. But people actually thought this is what happens. They thought that flies just come from rotting meat. They didn't realize that other flies had to come and lay their eggs that turn into maggots that turn into flies. There's actually a whole bunch of experiments out there that disprove this, but that's something you can go check out on the Google. Biogenesis, bio life, or life make means living things come from other living things. Means you have to have a living thing to have another living thing. So an example, you came from your mom. So your mom and your dad produced you. So you had to have life to have life. And so we know that biogenesis is right and abiogenesis is wrong. Beginning Earth. So this is the theory of how the beginning Earth looked. It had an atmosphere. Yes, it did. But the atmosphere was different from now. Right now, our atmosphere is mainly nitrogen, some oxygen, and some other variable gases like CO2 and methane and stuff, and other ones like that. The atmosphere back at the beginning of Earth that was thought to only be hydrogen, methane, ammonium, ammonia, there's a difference, and water vapor. Hydrogen, you guys kind of know about. It is flammable. Methane, the major source of methane in our atmosphere now comes from cow farts. And ammonia, it's a cleaning supply now that we use. It has a really strong smell to it that if you actually stuck your nose into it, it could burn. it burns. Um, and water vapor is just water in a gas form. There was lightning back then. It was hot, and there was no oxygen. So, since there was no oxygen, we as humans would not survive. And what they thought was the combination of all this stuff, the lightning, the heat, the um, the components of the atmosphere, actually would combine and create organic compounds, those amino acids. And what do amino acids build into? Proteins. We talked about that in multiple videos that amino acids are the monomer to proteins and they link together to make proteins. All right. So, with all that, we had at some point we had to have first life. And the theory is that the first lives were anaerobic prokaryotes. What that means is that they did not need oxygen. That's what the and part is. And not aerobic, no oxygen. And they were prokaryotes. They were simple cells. So just reminders, we talked about prokaryotic cells previous videos. They had no nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. Remember, pro rhymes with no. But they have DNA and they have ribosomes, so they can make proteins. So their food source were those organic compounds, those amino acids in the oceans that were occurring. And so they could take those amino acids and to the ribosome and make the proteins. So that's how they lived on. So the second life is it started to evolve in something called photosynthetic prokaryotes. Photo means light. So they're going to use light. And so they're going to carry out photosynthesis. If you don't remember, go check out the photosynthesis video to learn a little bit more about that. But if you remember, without the simple version of it is CO2 plus H2O plus light. So there was carbon dioxide and there was water out there, plus there was light. And so they were able to produce their sugar and this right here, O2, known as oxygen. These photosynthetic prokaryotes released oxygen into the atmosphere, which is very important. These are the creatures the organisms that we think as scientists are the reason why the atmosphere started to have oxygen that could later support life like humans. The third life was called aerobic prokaryotes. That means that they could use oxygen. Now that there was oxygen in the atmosphere from the photosynthetic prokaryotes, the aerobic prokaryotes could actually use oxygen and do cellular respiration, where they take in oxygen and they use sugar and they start to produce the other stuff. And we talked about cellular respiration in a previous video. Now, this stuff wasn't like one day this, one day that, one day this. We're talking about thousands and millions of years between the creation of them. The fourth life in early Earth was eukaryotic cells. And we talked about eukaryotic cells when we talked about prokaryotic cells. They're much more complex. They have a lot more going on. And they finally had a true nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. And the idea of it is something called the endosymbiotic theory about how they form. And we're going to talk about them on that on the next slide. So these came next in our idea. After this, life started to explode, and you can look at the fossil record and geological time, and you can see how things came to be and things died off. But this is the fourth life of early Earth. Now we're not really talking about now Earth, we're just talking about early Earth. So the endosymbiotic theory, the way that eukaryotic cells work, two main things about eukaryotic cells that were really important. In animal cells, it was that there was mitochondria, and in plant cells, there was something called chloroplast. The idea is that the mitochondria and the chloroplast once were actually prokaryotes. One was those photosynthetic prokaryotes, and the other one was the anaerobic prokaryotes. Not the anaerobic, the aerobic prokaryotes. So this other cell actually was out looking for food, and it engulfed one of these other cells. Say it engulfed a um, aerobic prokaryote, like you see here. Here's a cell, it comes and it engulfed it, it went in. It was supposed to digest it, but they started to work together and they now live together. And so there's actually evidence about mitochondria having different DNA structure than the DNA in the nucleus. So it's all about working together, which you should always do. Work together with people. Don't argue with them. All right. So a conclusion of cell evolution: you have anaerobic prokaryotes that then we had photosynthetic prokaryotes that produce the oxygen to allow the aerobic prokaryotes to come. And then the eukaryotic cells came because they engulfed the other ones and used them and not ate them. What do you think would have came after eukaryotic cells? Any hints? Any ideas? All right. Um, After that, I usually tell my students that it's multicellular organisms. They start really small and they get bigger and bigger to the point where you have dinosaurs, elephants, mammoths, and even humans. Long way down the line. But after eukaryotic cells, it would be multicellular organisms. But that's a little bit about early Earth. Like I said, you should probably go to Google, uh, learn about some of the experiments that proved about early Earth, about disproving abiogenesis. But I really hope you learned something today. And this is Mr. Norris, and he is signing out.